What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Glory Boys episode.
Let's go.
Come on, I'm one of your hosts, Darren.
I'm Trev, and today it looks a little different, but we got a special guest, Danny Lee, on the podcast.
What up?
Austin
Let's
is
go.
not here right now, but he'll be back next
He's not with us
episode.
any longer. He's not with us.
But we have Danny, so
He's gone forever. Just kidding. No, he's literally hanging out with his kiddos and wife and going to be here in a little bit.
Yep.
We're actually filming this podcast in between shoots because, and it's really interesting. I was thinking about that when we went to the gas station a second ago.
Mhm.
We were talking about the pod and how much we love it, and we're like, man, it's always so hard to like create time and space for this podcast, but I value it so much and I love doing it. And
Yeah.
we're literally like filming all day. Then we had this little break where we just smashed a bunch of hot wings,
Mhm.
and we're cramming this podcast recording in between another shoot before a client is here
Yep.
in just about 45 minutes. So what we want to talk about in this episode today is all about capacity. We're just going to dive right in. And our friend Danny here has some really great wisdom.
Yeah.
So just really quick for our listeners, just like give us a little brief on who you are. You've been on the pod before.
Yeah, recurring guest,
Yeah,
baby. Recurring guest, Danny Lee.
Back in the series when we had guests the first time when you first
Yeah.
came down here. So
Yeah, when I was a guest.
which was like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah. So
It was
yeah.
like right when you guys first moved into this studio space.
Yes. So like a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was literally just telling the guys, it's kind of crazy doing the podcast now officially, where it's not just in front of the psych wall with whatever gear you have
Yeah.
available. Like
Yeah.
there's mics and headsets and all of that.
A
And so it's
dedicated
great.
room
Right.
Yeah.
because this room wasn't ready.
It wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't even painted
Yeah.
or anything yet. And I think to do a little shameless plug inside of it, what I've found and what I see all of the time is 1.5 million people now think that because they have an opinion, they can start a podcast.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, like to do it right is not easy, but to do it at all is,
Yeah.
which that'll preach.
Oh.
That'll
But
preach.
everybody has access to put on a podcast now, but
Yeah.
not everybody has the knowledge or the wisdom to actually justify doing a podcast. And so
Yeah.
if you're listening to the Glory Boys pod right now, it's not just another podcast for you to entertain yourself with. I guarantee you that you listening to what we're going to talk about today, what they've talked about over the last weeks and what is going to come, I guarantee you will build your life and make you a better creative entrepreneur,
Come on.
business owner, all of that
Yeah.
for it. And
Yeah.
so
Appreciate
excited
that.
to be on.
Yeah,
Heck
thanks,
yeah.
man.
I believe that we all live pretty big lives, that we, and the lives that we want to live are going to be even bigger. The ones that we want to achieve to, we have dreams,
Yeah.
vision, goals, so many things. We talk about it all the time. But the one thing about capacity that I was thinking about as we were literally just hanging out, we're like, we should have a podcast about capacity because I think it's really, really interesting that people can get really, really caught up in what they have. People can feel full. People can feel at max capacity. And then the visionaries are the people that are maybe wanting to achieve more. Maybe they'll start to, and then they'll just keep running and running and running and running, but then that's not sustainable, so they'll burn out. So like, what are your thoughts on living a big life, having vision, building your capacity as you continue to go towards the big goals and dreams that you have?
Yeah. I think the thought on capacity and all of this starts with the thought of potential. And what's kind of funny is like this has been at like the forefront of my mind for like the last probably like 3 weeks. Blake, Trev's brother, and I were actually talking about this a lot on our way up to men's conference last week. And I think the two things that you have that combat each other often in the world of like whether it's church, but honestly more just creativity in general is this idea of purpose versus potential. And I think a lot of people what they think is that their purpose is ultimately found in their potential, and that isn't the case at all whatsoever. And so if we take even a step back from capacity and look at like the foundation of this all, we have to ask ourselves the question is, are we chasing after our purpose or are we chasing after our potential? Inside of our purpose is our potential and not the other way around.
Okay.
But what we find now with a lot of creatives is we see people doing things at a really large scale and we think, oh, that's my potential. And they've actually lost their purpose in it
Wow.
altogether. So that's where
That's
you
great.
see certain creatives willing to sell their soul to this thing and give up on the purpose that they originally started with, whether it's a really famous singer who started out as a Christian artist, saw the potential that they had in this industry, sold their Christendom, and have now like sold out on making secular music. It's like, no, like your purpose originally was given to you by God to fulfill what the kingdom has desired for you. And so I think we get so caught up in the purpose or we get so caught up in the potential that we lose sight of our purpose. And in the context of capacity, what we have to ask ourselves, I think, on a regular basis is, what am I chasing? Because if we have very clearly outlined what we're chasing, if we're chasing our purpose, we're not chasing our ideological potential. I found that like my capacity actually expands, and I have room for more when I'm chasing after the thing that I feel called to do, not the thing that I think is really cool to do.
That's heat.
That's great.
That's really
great
good.
word, Pastor. Preach it. So what would you tell to somebody? So obviously I feel like if you have any ambition in life, you have goals, you have some sort of, excitement for life and for the future and what's to come. What do you tell somebody, or how do you manage the time now? Like there's things to be done now and today. Like right now, obviously if we're talking about this podcast, like it would be cool if we had 300 million listeners and tons of sponsors knocking at our door. But we're, 75, 80 episodes in or whatever it is. And like we've done this for free every time. But I do think that there's, something to come, in the future, but we have to do this now. And that is kind of an answer to my question, but what would you say to somebody? They're like, I want to do this. I want to be this. I want to achieve this, but what do you do today?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think even just tagging into what I just said, it really goes into this like purpose versus potential argument of like, well, there's so much out in front of me. I think what we find is that people see the barriers to it and then they never decide to take the step. And so they never like, capacity isn't even a thing that they're worried about because they haven't even started the thing that they've have the vision or the dream to do. But when we look at like purpose as our ultimate driving factor, I can do something in the purpose that I feel called to do right now, whether I feel like I've arrived or not. And so I think what you guys are doing specifically with this podcast of it, you're not making a dime off of it yet, but you have this podcast space and you have these mics and you have headsets and you have cameras to record it. And you have like, so you are doing everything that you possibly can. That's in your hands right now. And I think even speaking to creatives who may not have access to the gear that you think you need, like these guys are pros at making do with what is in their hands right now.
It's one of our core values. Do the best with what you have.
That's right.
And honestly, at the end of the day, like I know this is for more than just Christians, but at the end of the day, I think that's all that God asks of us. God doesn't ask you to do more than what you can with what you have. God asks you to do the most with what you have in your hands right now.
That's right.
And I think that's the focus, and that's where we truly find like our purpose, and we find people worth running this race together with, is when we say, hey, I have this in my hands. So I may not be reaching my fullest potential right now. I may not be stretching my capacity right now. I may not be doing all that I believe that I can do, but I'm going to be faithful with what God's put in my hands right now, with what I have in my hands right now. I got a camera. I'm going to take engagement photos. I got a camera. I'm going to walk into a business and go, hey, can I shoot some social content for you? I got like
a phone.
A phone. Like I got a knowledge for audio. I got anything. I'm walking into a business and going, hey, I don't have it all figured out, but I do got a really humble heart and a learning spirit, and I'm going to do what I can with it.
And we can obviously do a little plug of like, a lot of this stuff is built and taught really in the local church. Like we've found the skills that we have, and like your communication skills and your audio and production. And I mean, you knew none of that.
Nothing.
Zero. But
I knew what I wanted it to look like.
Yeah, sure. Don't we all? But I mean, there was a time where, I just said yes and walked into a church full of 25, 30 hungry, excited people that were just like, let's do this thing. And I was like, I'll take pictures while you guys do that thing. And here we are, like 5, 7, almost 7 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, almost 7.
Yeah.
Which is so bizarre. So, I mean, obviously, like, maybe you don't have a local church or a church that you're planted in, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely will benefit your life, getting plugged in, getting around people that believe in you, helping people achieve their goals, and being around people that believe in you and will lift you up, give you cameras in your hand, put, hey, go, gaff the cable on the floor.
Yeah.
That like leads to you, turning some dials, and then you're, next thing you know, you have this wealth of knowledge that is needed down the street at this bar for this gig that you get paid $1,000 to mix sound for XYZ. I mean, it just, there's this willingness to your yes. And I think there's
power in it.
Yeah, there's definitely power.
Yeah. And I think of even like Trev's story. I don't know how much you guys have gotten into with like him starting at the company.
Yeah.
But even like, hey, I just want to work with you guys, and I'm willing to find 2 extra hours in my day to drive up from Lincoln.
Right.
That is doing what, hey, this is what I have in my hands, and I'm willing to stretch. That's a capacity stretch right there.
Yeah.
But it's in your purpose.
Yeah.
And so it probably didn't feel like a capacity stretch.
Right.
It probably felt like a blessing.
Yeah.
And like it felt like a really great move, peaceful moves, got hands on it.
Yep.
But you've now found 2 extra hours in your day that you didn't think was there originally. Especially with having kids, wife, all of that.
Yeah.
But now you're like, you know what? I know this is where my next step is. I know this is where God's taking me. I know this is what I want to do with my life. So I'm going to stretch in this season.
Yeah.
And then what we find is that as we stretch, we grow.
Sure.
And what felt like stretch in the past is no longer stretch to us now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're stronger because of it.
Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other theme that goes along as we're talking about capacity that we've mentioned, but maybe not said the word is stewardship, and what and how you're stewarding. And it brings me back to the verse that says, "To whom much is given, much is required." And I think that's a good mental reset for you of like, okay, wherever I'm at right now, even if I experience the blessing of where I want to go and the vision I have for this, I know that blessing doesn't exist for me because much is required of that.
Yeah.
Part of the joy of enjoying the blessing is putting the blessing to work, right? And so it's as you're reaching these capacities and you're wanting to expand, it's also managing your stewardship of are you at capacity or are you mismanaging what's been given to you? We were talking about kind of what's that sweet spot of capacity, and is it practical to run at 100% capacity all the time, or should we compensate here? And then we were talking about experiencing like the really highs and then coming back from that, and now you're not stretched. Yeah, it's a roller coaster, and I think that's something that is probably highly relatable to a lot of people. Is like you experience, whether it's a lot of blessing or just a certain situation or just an experience where you've been like really stretched and you're like operating at the, you've felt the best you've ever felt, but then all of a sudden seasons change and it's like, whoa, what happened to all of that? And now how do I operate in what seems like less? I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that and what's it like to navigate an up and down in capacity and what should be our goal?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I think for me in like my personality, I think I have even more of a hot take than what we were talking about earlier. In my opinion, we only have 85, 90 years in this world.
Yeah.
And if we're lucky, we have 80 to 90 good years
Right.
in this world.
Yep.
Not like, let's say 75 honestly, 65, because until you're like 22, you're an idiot.
That applies to everybody.
You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is. You're like, oof, those were.
And Gary Vee would be in the cornerback. No. You can start business when you're like 6 or 7. You can start like just figure it out. Like you can make millions of dollars by the time you're 10 years old. Like it's all about perspective.
Yeah. No. We're all idiots. So even like when you were talking about stewardship there a moment ago, I think of like the time that we have on this earth, and I'm even feeling convicted by this in this moment, but we only have so long and we only have so much time to steward. Time is honestly, it's it's that only resource that we're not making more of or getting
Wow.
more back.
Yeah.
And so I think of like when it comes to capacity, why wouldn't I always want to be running at a 9? Like that means I'm making the most out of my time.
Wow.
Now that does not mean that because I'm running at a 9 in my business all the time, I'm sacrificing time with my family. Because in my mind, I'm always running at a 9. I want to be a present dad.
Yeah.
I want to be a great husband. I want to be an awesome friend.
Yeah.
I want to be a great pastor. I want to be a great entrepreneur. Insert XYZ here.
Yep.
That means I'm running at a 9 all of the time. And I think it's our responsibility to steward that time well. I think a fallacy that we've all bought into, and I think one that a lie that creatives can buy into more than anybody else, is that we need our time to rest and refill. Well, the reality is God is the ultimate creator and the pinnacle of creativity. And I feel like if we're in touch with God and we're in touch with the community that he's put us around, like downloads can happen all of the time. And we can never, like the Bible says that he anoints my head with oil, my cup, it overflows. Like I think we should be always operating out of overflow. So even when it comes to capacity, my capacity may be a 10, but if I'm operating out of overflow, then I'm working at a 13 because God is moving through me.
Come on.
And I think that when we think about stewardship and we start thinking about the parable of the talents, right? Like the ultimate story of stewardship in the Bible, it really goes back to not how responsible they were with the individuals, but the thought or it goes back to who they thought the master to be. So the guy says, I thought you to be a hard man. So I buried it. Like, who do we think God is? And God is one who refills regularly. God is always there. But I also think the character of the man who was given 5 and then doubled it, like he wasn't going to get the return and then just go home and sit on his butt and do nothing. So he probably took the talents that he was given right then and there and went and tried to double them again. So I think what happens, and I'll stop rambling in just a moment, but I think what happens is we come off a weekend. So like all of us were just at our church's men's conference. And that's a push. And like we push really hard. Like we're up till midnight, 1 o'clock, back up at 5:30 for prayer. And then we're shooting and producing and doing all
singing.
Of this stuff.
We're singing,
like multiple roles
creating
all
this
day.
whole experience.
Creating an atmosphere where guys can put their walls down and connect with one another, connect with God.
So
like that's not easy. So we go hard in men's conference all week. Well, I mean, Monday I had to turn around and take all of the rentals back. And I had 3-hour drive to return rentals on Monday. I returned them at 2 different spots. Then I sat down at my desk after I got back and I was working on team conference stuff because we got team conference right around the corner. And I had one of the guys in the office look at me and they go, I really appreciate that you can turn around and like just shift gears. And I was like, I'm not shifting gears.
This is who I am.
Like I run at a 9.
There's one gear, baby.
Because I'm giving God my very best. And I'd rather sit on my bed at the end of the day and go, than sit on my bed at the end of the day, twiddling my thumbs going, damn, I wish I could have worked harder. It's that of like, I had more to give. I had more to give. I don't ever want to live that way.
What's been really helpful for me is understanding the deceptions of ownership. And what does it mean if we truly think that we own what we have, be it our time or our talents or our treasures, and anything that falls in that realm? How you steward things is directly related to whose you think it is. And if, some people have lower standards, but most of the time, if you're aware that everything we've been given is not actually ours from the very beginning of time, the Garden of Eden was entrusted to Adam and Eve, never given ownership of. And so, because you think about it, there was no reason that the serpent would have to deceive Adam and Eve if they owned the garden. There was no reason to deceive them into thinking they could be like God if God had given them full ownership of what they had. But that's not how it was. He entrusted it to him, understanding this is yours to steward, but this is mine. I reign dominion over everything, and so that's still true to this day with everything big or small that we're given. And so as you're stretching your capacity, and as you're trying to figure out how am I stewarding this well, or am I stewarding this well, keep a fresh perspective that none of this is ours. And that actually, it's not none of this is ours, so it doesn't matter what I do with it. It's actually a freedom of like, thank goodness I'm not responsible for this.
Encouragement time.
I think for like the creative that's listening to this that may not fully believe in God, I just want to take a moment and encourage you / welcome you into the family, because whether you believe it or not, like it is the truth. Like Jesus came down, died on the cross, and was resurrected so that we could be justified and have a relationship with God. And ultimately, like, we've 110% believe that he created everything with a word that was spoken. And God, being the ultimate creative, wants to actually use your talents and gifts to make a difference in this world.
Yeah, come on. This is
He
for
doesn't
somebody.
want to, he doesn't want to just, he doesn't want you to just operate in your gifts so that you can make more money.
Right.
Money is a byproduct of relationship with the creator. And I believe that today, as you're hearing this, you're going to have an encounter with Jesus that wrecks your world, because I know that God, being the ultimate creator, wants to meet with you, wants to influence you, wants to even just refill and refresh you. Some of those creative blocks that you're feeling, I believe, are being broken down right now in Jesus' name, and that you're going to have fresh revelation, you're going to have fresh energy, you're going to have fresh passion, you're going to have fresh influence over your area. And that comes from having a relationship with the ultimate creator.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit earlier about complacency and that kills capacity. I was thinking about that a little bit, but what do you say to the person that's like, so obviously, like, you choose to run at a 9 because you know who you are, who your God is, like what you're capable of, what you want, the character you want to be. So I think that's really powerful. But what do you say when something in life happens that forces your capacity? So like something Alex Hermosi just threaded this, and I retweeted it or rethreaded it.
Nice.
Retweet, whatever, dude.
Social media.
It's practically Twitter, just better. But he said, it's amazing what you can endure when you have no choice. And I was like, that's actually fire with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I can recall so many times where something out of my control is happening, and it stretched my perspective, stretched my character, stretched my capacity. How do you handle the forced stretch of capacity versus the one that really is like who you are and your character and what you choose?
I think the way in which we view the situation, like, I think you're big faith. So you inherently view every situation that comes against you or that you walk into as an opportunity for your capacity to stretch.
Yeah.
So we can either view every moment as an opportunity to stretch our capacity or to shrink our capacity.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I think in some of those moments, having a kid, the death of a loved one, or maybe you got fired from a job or whatever that may be, you can either choose to either allow this moment to control my life and then live in lack and shrink your capacity and go, oh my God, these kids are such a burden to me.
Wow.
It's like, no, that kid is a blessing.
Yeah.
Now you need to allow your capacity to stretch.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at this season not going, I have less time. I'm looking at the season going, I have more joy.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this season going, I have more opportunity.
Great.
I'm looking at this season going, I have more blessing.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to outside situations or outside scenarios, the reality is those situations are way less, happen way less often than ones that we force ourselves into. It's usually, I think, a bad decision,
Yep.
Yeah.
a bad choice,
Yeah.
a moment of, oh my God, I'm such an idiot, that now puts you in this season of pressure of like, oh, I never fought. Like, I have one. So we do like gigs on the side of like AVL, audio visual lighting.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we got offered a gig around the same time as Team Conference. And in the middle of the men's conference push and all of that, I forgot to respond to them.
Mm.
And so now I have to go to this gig this afternoon and tell them, hey, I can't do this. And it puts them in a really bad situation. It makes my company look horrible.
Yeah.
When if I would have just embraced the stretch in the moment and gone, I need to take time to actually respond to this client and take time to look at the business as a whole, then I would have been a responsible and maybe saved business for the future.
Sure.
But what I'm feeling in my gut is now this ruined an opportunity for us. And it was just a bad decision that I made.
Sure.
That happens more than outside situations, I think.
Yeah.
And so even having a good attitude though in the middle of that is, I think, what will determine what happens going forward. So rather than me going, well, you should have sent me more information about it.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I think this is your fault. Me
Wrong
going,
answer.
Look, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely screwed the pooch on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
well, because people will manipulate
Yeah.
the situation in order to get themselves out of the weeds.
Yeah.
You know, that's even our natural inclination
It is.
how can I get this weight off of my shoulders and make this not my fault?
Right.
Because I don't want to be in this situation and this is awkward. So you know, that's the natural bent of just humans in general, is like, how do I get this out of my fault and into their, you know, what could have they done differently?
Yeah.
Little
pro tip for all the creatives out there. If you take responsibility more than you think you need to, you'll find yourself landing more clients, having more retainers, having more return business that you think you would ever have. If you just take responsibility, say, I'm sorry, and ask how you can fix it.
Yeah, be an adult.
Facts. Yeah, be an adult.
Be an adult.
I'm curious to know your guys' just, I think this is, you know, sometimes people have like word of the year or whatever to kind of keep their focus. My, if you will, word of the year, what I believe to be a word with a lot of conviction and that was put on my heart on purpose by the Holy Spirit, is uncomfortability. And so I think what has happened is I'm guilty of it, obviously, myself, but I think I'm beginning to be hyper aware of the choices I make solely because it's the more comfortable choice and not the choices I make because I want to be stretched and I want to operate at a better capacity and I want to steward my things better for the sake of comfort, you know, or discomfort. And so that's just like been really heavy on my heart this whole entire year. I just want to get your thoughts as it pertains to the conversation today about our culture and this like disease of comfort that's woven into it.
Here's what I found is that it's very easy for us to hide behind an external scapegoat. Oftentimes what we'll do is either blame our kiddos, blame our wives, blame our husbands, and blame our God for what we're supposed to be doing in this season.
Wow.
So you'll find that when you feel like you need to push or when somebody's like trying to pull you to another level, and you don't want to do it, you'll have answers to their question that sound very much like, well, I need to talk to my wife about this, but I don't think she's going to go for it. Or, wow, that just kind of interrupts. Like, I need to really like watch my kiddos. And now, granted, those are really healthy things.
Sure.
And you should ask your wife, and you and your wife should be on the same page. And you should be taking care of your kids.
Right.
But then when you get into the level of, I just don't feel like God's leading me to do. I don't know about you, but I don't know if in my life God has ever gone, load in at 4:50 a.m.
Right.
Never.
Facts.
Never heard him say that.
Never.
Oh.
But God has been faithful. And so when I say, God, what do you need from me in this season?
Yeah.
God, I'm available. I'm open. I'm willing. Like, what do you have for me? The answer usually is never stay comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The answer is usually never.
There it is.
Why don't you take a load off?
There it
Put your
is.
feet up, crack
on
open
now.
a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos, and throw on a YouTube golf video.
Yeah.
Like,
now.
That sounds like a good time.
that it does, but that never is.
Yeah.
That's never God's answer. I
Yeah.
found.
Yep.
And oftentimes what I find as the answer to all of my problems is me just putting a little bit more work in.
Yeah.
Me grinding
So good.
it out a little bit more,
Yeah.
Right.
pushing a little bit harder,
Yep.
focusing on the things that need to be focused on.
Yeah.
And in no way, shape, or form do I want you guys to take away from this as work harder,
Yeah.
Right.
because it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with focus more intently.
Yeah.
Focus and be where you're at
Yeah.
when you're there.
Yeah.
If you're at work, be all in.
So good.
If you're at home, be all in.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're with friends, be all in.
Yeah.
That, I think, we'll find ourselves when we are fully present where we're at. We'll
Mm.
find ourselves with our capacity stretching on a regular basis to
Yeah.
where it doesn't feel so uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah.
I think that really sets us up to be that consistent person that we want to and desire to be.
Yep.
It's just be all in when you are there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, living at a capacity that's not normal, that's not comfortable, it does come with the price. And
Yeah.
it does get hard at times. We're humans. We get tired. There's,
Yeah.
you know, mental and physical exhaustion. It's
Right.
reality. But get around people that believe in you, that pray for you, that support you, that
Yeah.
are there to bounce ideas off of, that encourage you to take the right steps, not the wrong ones.
Mhm.
And then overall, just being present in what you're doing. So, just like Danny said, be there. When you're there, be there. Be
Mhm.
all in at your work, at your home, with your wife and kids, wherever that may be.
Well, what a great episode. Thanks, Danny, for spending some time with us
Absolutely.
today.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think two short things. You're doing better than you think you are,
Mm.
and you could do more than you think you can.
Let's
Ooh.
go. That's
Ooh,
heat.
that's
Where can the people find you, Danny? Online, on social?
You can find me typically at your local Chick-fil-A,
Hey.
getting some nuggets or a spicy sandwich, but on Instagram at danny.l.lee. And then on Facebook, Danny Lee, but I'm sure there's a million of them. So
Sick. Well, and if you want to see more of this podcast, you can follow us on Instagram at the Glory Boys Pod or on TikTok at the Glory Boys Podcast.
Yeah.
We got the YouTube channel if you're watching. Thank you for watching. If you want to follow along with our business that operates outside of this, kind of in the grander scheme, you can find us on any platform at Glory Visuals.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.